Facebook land. How are you? I am here live for Holy Week for Kidstown. I am Becky Santini. I'm the Children's Ministry Director at Covenant Community Church. Just trying to find where we are right here. There we are. All right, so I've got a little bit of a different setup today. My chair that I normally use at this desk is really tall, so it keeps cutting my head off. So I'm using a short chair at a tall desk, so I feel like my proportions are a little off here. But anyways, this is Wednesday of Holy Week. And did you guys know the world all around us is amazing and unusual, and it's organized and creative, and God made all of it. The study of science is really a study of God. So He made the stars, He created gravity, He spoke it all into existence. And whenever you study some aspect of science, you're learning about the creativity of God Himself. And you're learning about one small way that God is revealing Himself. God created science, and it's really neat. So I have this really cool experiment to show you today. It's pretty cool. I've got my little saucer here. I've got some milk, and I'm going to pour the milk onto the plate. I'm just going to put a nice layer across the bottom of the plate. And just let it fill right in. Here we go. And I'm going to put in some food coloring drops, just kind of where I feel like. Got blue and got yellow and red. I'm going to put red like that. Do one there. And a green. There's our green. And then I'm going to take my Q-tip here. So right now I've got milk and food coloring, and that's it. I'm going to take my Q-tip, and I've got dish soap right here. Dawn dish soap, regular green dish soap. You can use blue, pink, whatever dish soap. And I'm going to put my Q-tip right in the middle here. I'm just going to decide where I want to put it. You guys ready? Watch what happens. That's pretty cool. I am just moving all this around right now. So as you watch, what's happening here is the soap molecules are trying to attach themselves to the fat molecules in the milk. And the food coloring, all it's doing is it's just kind of going along for the ride as the fat molecules in the milk and the soap molecules react to each other. So it's pretty cool. Can do all sorts of neat things with this, right? It's pretty neat. So that's pretty awesome. This is something you could do at home. It's very easy, and it's just a small thing that God has done, and it's pretty cool. God uses little science projects to display His glory. Can you think of something that God has done to display His glory? We've been learning about a lot of things this week, and in the last couple of weeks, we learned about God parting the Red Sea. We have seen Jesus walk on water. He calmed a storm. He's healed sick. I bet you could come up with a lot of other things that God and Jesus have done as well. And all through the Gospels, we see that Jesus has power over nature. He has power over disease. He has power over Satan. He has power over death too. Jesus was God. Jesus is God. And He was with God in the beginning, which means that Jesus created as well. That means Jesus, God, created life. So I'm going to read you a story. I'm going to move my binder right over here, right into my lap. I'm going to read you a story. It's about a man named Lazarus. He was a good friend of Jesus's, and Jesus was not near Lazarus at the time of the story. So I want you to just listen as I read this story. So there was a man named Lazarus who was sick, and he lived in the town of Bethany, where Mary and her sister lived. Mary's the woman who later on put perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. You might remember that story, you might not at this point. Well, Mary's brother was Lazarus, and he was the man who was now sick. So Mary and Martha sent someone to tell Jesus, and they said, "Lord, the one you love is sick." And when Jesus heard this, he said, "Oh, the sickness will not end in death. It is for the glory of God. This has happened to bring glory to the Son of God." Jesus loved Martha and her sisters and her sister and Lazarus. But when he heard Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for a few more days. Then Jesus said to his followers, "Let's go back to Judea." And the followers said, But teacher, the Jews there tried to kill you with stones. That was only a short time ago. And now you want to go back there? And Jesus said, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the daylight, he will not stumble, because he can see the world's light. But if anyone walks at night, he stumbles, because there's no light to help him see." After Jesus said this, he added, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him." And the followers said, "But Lord, if he's asleep, he can sleep. He will get well." Well, what Jesus meant was that Lazarus was actually dead, but his followers thought he meant Lazarus was actually like sleeping. So Jesus said plainly to them, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so you may believe. But let us go to him now." So Thomas said to the other followers, "Let's go too. We will die with him." So Jesus arrived in Bethany, and there he learned that Lazarus had already been dead and in a tomb for 4 days. Bethany was about 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come there to comfort Mary and Martha about their brother. Martha heard that Jesus was coming, and so she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you anything you ask." And Jesus said, "Your brother will rise and live again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise and live again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will have life, even if he dies. And he who lives and believes in me will never die." Martha, "Do you believe this?" And Martha answered, "Oh, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God. You are the one who is coming to the world." Jesus felt very sad in his heart, and he was very deeply troubled. And he said, "Where did you bury him?" "Come and see, Lord," they said. And Jesus cried. So the Jews said, "Oh, see how much he loved him." And some of them said, "Well, if Jesus healed the eyes of the blind man, why didn't he keep Lazarus from dying?" Again, Jesus felt very sad in his heart. He came to the tomb, and the tomb was a cave with a large stone in front of it. And Jesus said, "Move the stone." And Martha said, but Lord, it's been 4 days since he died. There will be a bad smell." Jesus said to her, "Didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they moved the stone away from the entrance, and then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you heard me. I know you always hear me. But I said these things because of the people here around me. I want them to believe that you sent me." After Jesus said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" And the dead man came out. His hands and his feet were wrapped in pieces of cloth, and he had cloth over his face. And Jesus said to them, "Take the cloth off of him and let him go." Now that is an interesting story. There's a couple of questions I ask myself. Why didn't Jesus go right away when he heard his friend was sick? And the main reason he didn't go was so that the Son of God would be glorified. And he knew what happened to Lazarus before he even got there. He knew Lazarus was dead. But he also said he was glad that he wasn't there when Lazarus died. Why did he say that? He said that because he wanted his disciples to believe. He wanted them to believe in him and his Father, and that he was the resurrection and the life. And so a lot of people believed in Jesus after they saw this miracle. Some of them went and told the Pharisees what Jesus had done. And it was at that point that they decided that they were going to kill him. So with our science experiment here, let me move this back over, try not to spill it. It was really neat watching the colors swirl around, and it's even more interesting once you know why the colors moved. So the more we learn, the more we understand the experiment. So people like you and me and scientists, they like to think they have got all figured out. But the truth is, there's no way we can ever know enough about God. The more we learn, the more we realize there is more to learn. So in the story that we just read, Jesus raised someone from the dead. He showed people that he controlled life and death, even his own life and death. And you know, Jesus didn't have to go hang on the cross for us. He could have just gone poof and disappeared whenever he wanted, but we don't have a God who's magic. God is supernatural. He is beyond what is natural in our eyes. And after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, many people believed that Jesus was who he said he was, the Son of God. But then there was the others that went to the Pharisees. You know, sometimes we have a hard time believing in Jesus because life can be bad. Like, death is awful, bad things happen. But Jesus said that the death of his friend happened so that the glory would be given to God. So Jesus stayed on the cross because he loves you. And when bad things happen, we need to ask a hard question. We need to ask, how will God glorify himself in this situation? And when God is glorified, people then believe. I will see you all on Friday. And we're going to do a Good Friday Kids Town Live. Have a wonderful rest of your week.